Namaskar ji. As usual, we continue with our chapter number 3 on spirituality, truth eternal. Okay. Let's offer our prayers. That's all. Okay. All right. Those who worship the soul, along with the body and mind, have their attention fixed on the body, mind, and the soul as well, even though they do not know the purpose of the soul. They perform the activities of the waking, dream, and sleep states. And in spite of performing the activities of these three states, they are unaware of the truth about the soul. As such, they are ignorant. Such is their condition. So, this is very simple actually, that we all do identify ourselves with body, plus, we also identify ourselves with subtle bodies like my thinking, my intellect, my ego, meaning my achievements, me and mine, things that belong to me. So we often remain busy with petty things, according to Lalaji Maharaj. Too superficial to dwell on, and some also do identify them with soul, but not deep enough. Not so deep enough to understand the significance of the soul and its role in our life. Or you might say, role in its own life. Because after all, life is because of the soul, it's not because of myself. The words body minded, mind minded, and soul minded are abstract terms. The words having body, having mind, and having soul can be used instead. And we have been using these words of like identification. That's also good as long as it convinces your mind and doesn't give you wrinkles in the head. From the point of view of physicality, subtleness, and causal form, all the three coverings are found in all and on all jivas. The subtle mind occupies the middle place, which brings and can bring the tidings from the above and below. Since the subtle bodies, here we have to understand instead of subtle mind, try to understand it by substituting this word with subtle bodies actually. When these subtle bodies, that includes chit, manas, buddhi, and ahankar, then I think we are able to appreciate how and when these subtle bodies associate themselves with the higher realms, meaning with the soul, or if they get too perplexed with the lower realm, which is body, the physical cross. So it takes up those tendencies, the soul tendencies or the tendencies of the bodies. So here I sense the hint here, indirect hint from dear Lalaji Maharaj, that as long as we remain identified, or as long as our mind remains oriented towards the lower, I think the chances of evolutions are pretty rare. But if we remain associated or identified with the significance of the higher realms, then there is a possibility of advancing from thinking to feeling, from intellect or buddhi to intuition and beyond into wisdom, where your ego is no longer identified with your lower self, but then all these activities that I do or whatsoever where I is involved, then it is substituted with He, the Lord. So ego is now transferred to the higher self, Paramatma. But as the mental and intellectual practice of meditation of ordinary person is on the body and mind alone, they are confined to these planes only. So, although the mind rises high, it finds itself lost there and returns in an unconscious state because it does not know how to remain up there and have control over that state. So, here you see what we do in our regular meditation is instead of dwelling on what we identify ourselves with in general, we are substituting it with the presence of divine light. At least momentarily, we remain in touch with the divine essence, which is further magnified by the intense transmission that we receive from our masters. Now, the idea of staying above in that state, upasana, has been further enhanced by dear Babuji Maharaj's philosophy. He said, constant remembrance keeps you up there, thinking that all these things that you are doing, think that you are doing it for your master or for your beloved, or you are doing it for the Lord, or you remain absorbed in that meditative state. All these approaches helps us to retain the memory of that meditative state that we had acquired after each meditation, you see. So this upasana meaning to remain always in those higher realms, up means above. Therefore, such people hardly know anything about the deep sleep state of sushupti, nor can they know about the soul. Okay. Everyone who indulges in desires experiences all these three states. These three states means this waking, dream, and deep sleep state. Everyone experiences those day and night during the 24 hours, but does not know about the third covering the soul. What to desire? This is a question I put for myself. That what can you desire from that dimension of causal body where you have no idea about yourself? There is no awareness either. How can one project desires from that state of unawareness? It's impossible. So, some level of awareness is required in interfering with your own evolution. Good or bad, good desires will take you in one direction. First, there is the seed and then the tree. As the causal body is the seed, it comes first. The soul is not concerned with knowledge or gyan. There is steadiness, composure, comfort, and peace in the soul because it has no concern even for knowledge. So, how can it become restless? Impossible. So, many people think it to be steady and yet call it knowledge. This is nothing but an error in expressing the thought. There is no movement in both Tam and Sat. At the extreme state of Tam and at the culmination of Sat, there is no movement. It's all steady. Movement is only in the middle state or Rajas. If so, why is it said that action is the nature of the body, which is physical and is constituted of Tam? Action is in movement, and there should be no movement in stupefied condition. To me, the answer I would give to Lalaji Maharaj is that movement is the result of having a soul. Without this, jiva, there will not be any movement. That's why the definition of Atman, At and Man, meaning movement and thinking. That's the nature of the soul. Though on itself, it doesn't move, but it makes things move because of its presence. Action and knowledge, karma and jnana, are both in the mind. They are the characteristics of the subtle body. Truly speaking, action, knowledge, and their purpose, which is happiness. All these three are the characteristics of the mind, which is constituted of Raj. Action, knowledge, and bliss. All these three are intermediary states, and they are the characteristics of the mind. So here we can appreciate the beauty when Babuji Maharaj talks about when we enter after transcending the states belonging to religious person and enter states of spiritual realms, and then we move on further to reality. That too ends according to Babuji Maharaj, and he says, now you enter the sphere of bliss. It is as though bliss is the ultimate, but there Babuji dissolves your doubts and says, no, you have to still go beyond into state of nothingness. And here, the Lalaji Maharaj's idea also supports that view that bliss, after all, is an intermediary state. There is something much greater waiting us. Okay, let me read that part again. Action, knowledge, and bliss. All these three are intermediary states, and they are the characteristics of the mind. The only difference is that action is lower, bliss is higher, knowledge is in the middle. The physical body is lower, the causal body is higher, and the subtle body is intermediate. Action is expressive and is outer movement. Bliss, comfort, and peace are stationary, while thinking and understanding are intermediary. Now, when we talk only of this action, knowledge, and bliss, question arises in the heart, what is the role of bhakti? It is in reality, I think, that one experiences bliss only because of bhakti. It's because you are interested, you love what you do. Otherwise, the action will remain dry, and without uh, involvement of the heart, such dry action which remains bhakti free, you cannot enjoy, you cannot have bliss. So, bhakti is a paramount factor in this entire exercise, whatsoever you may be doing, whether you are studying as a student, or you are teaching as a teacher, or you are doing your house chores as a housewife, or you're going out to office or in the business world, everything. without an exception. It can become a burden moment you lose interest. So the idea of maintaining interest, and if you can still take it further and say, oh, I love it, it's not just my interest. And a stage comes where you say, my life cannot exist without this very fundamental thing I love. And that's when it culminates into bhakti. What does bhakti culminate into? Here I would like to add and reveal a top secret today. Though it's not really a secret, but without this bhakti, you cannot develop your own spiritual entity. The master's mind cannot absorb the vibrations from the unloving heart. That means one who is not a bhakta, true bhakta, not for the namesake, not just because you have been meditating for last 45 years or 50 years. That doesn't make you really a bhakta. But do you feel in your heart that without the glance, without attention of my master, I remain like a dry desert where nothing grows, barren? Such souls, though they may practice, it's a labor and cannot advance. You need this spice called love in everything that we do, and more so when you're building a relationship with our gurus, with our Lord and God. One has to be absolutely honest and authentically loving, because you just cannot cheat them, remember. And without this honesty, authenticity, and true love, we call bhakti, formation of spiritual entity is next to impossible. Thank you. We'll explore this further later on.